Okay, today we're going to learn about the basic identities for trig. So you're going to have to here. So basic identities for the trig. And the reason why we're going to learn this is because you need to learn, because eventually you're going to have to learn about, you're going to have to graph the sine graph, the secant graph, the cotangent graph, the tangent graph, and you need to know the basic 6 identities of trig. So we have tangent, right? Tangent, can you see? So we have tangent of equals, it's sine over tangent of x, sine over x over cosine of x, right? Or y over x, right? Y over x. Then we have cotangent of x equals cosine of x over sine of x. Just flip the tangent. You're just flipping the tangent, if that makes sense. So it's x over y. And then we have secant of x, which is 1 over cosine of x, or you could just remember 1 over the c. It's 1 over cosine of x, right? Cosecant equals 1 over sine of x, right? Remember the s. Cosecant, and then we have let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then let's do the sine of x. Sine of x is y over the radius, and then cosine of x is x over the radius, right? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have all 6 of them. So okay, so we need to know those because we're gonna eventually learn to graph sine, the graph of sine, and the cosine graph, and then the tangent graph and the cosecant graph. So these are all handy. So we need to know what is the tangent of pi over 4, right? So remember our graph, pi over 4 is right here, right? And it has a cosine of square root 2 over 2, and then cosine of square root 2 over 2. And remember, tangent of pi over 4 is y over x. So here's your x and here's your y. So y is square root of 2 over 2. Divide that by x is square root of 2 over 2, which gives you 1, right? So you know what tangent is. What about cosecant of pi over 6? Remember, so cosecant is 1 over sine of pi over 6, right? So from the graph, pi 6 is right here, and has a cosine of √3/2 and a sine of 1/2, right? So what is the cosecant? So it's 1. It says 1 over sine. So we know that sine. What is sine? X. Here's your y. Is your y, right? So it's 1 over 1/2, right? So if we do the if we divide that, so it's, here's 1. That's like 1 over 1, and then 1 and 2. So our LCD is 2. So it's 2. So it's 2 times 1 is 2, and then that cancels, so your cosecant of pi over 6 is just 2, right? The answer is 2. What about the secant of let's say pi over 3? So we know that secant equals 1 over cosine of x. So let's first look at the graph. So where's pi over 3? Pi 6. Pi thirds is right here, right? It's 60 degrees, right? So 60 has a cosine of 1/2 and √3/2. So secant of pi over 3, 1 over cosine of pi over 3, right? 1 over cosine pi over 3. So that's 1 over, and what is the cosine of pi over 3? We said it's 1/2, right? Do the bracket, so here's 1 over 1, 2. So that equals 2 over 1, so 2. That cancels. So the secant of pi over 3 is just 2. Just 2. What about cotangent? Let's try cotangent of, let's try 5 pi over 6, right? Okay, remember cotangent, cot, is whatever, it's always the reciprocal of tangent, so tangent is y over x, right? So the reciprocal would be x over y. So, and then, okay, then we gotta figure out where is 5 pi over 6 in the circles. So here's pi over 6, and then 5 pi over 6 is right about here. So it's gonna have a cosine of negative, because it's in quadrant 2, negative √3/2, and a positive sine of 1/2. Here's your x and here's your y. So cotangent is x over y. So x is negative √3/2 over y, which is 1/2. Their LCD cancels, right? So it's just negative √3. So cotangent of 5 pi over 6 equals negative root 3, right? So now I'm going to briefly talk about identities. So one of our identities is sine square x plus cosine square x equals 1. And then another one is 1 plus cotangent square x equals cosecant square x, and then we have tangent square x plus 1 equals secant square x, right? I mean, here's 3 identities, but there's actually more, but here's just the 3 main ones. So let's give you an example. Let's simplify tangent x equals secant x, right? Tangent x equals secant x. So we want to simplify this. So what is tangent again? Tangent is sine y, sine of x over cosine of x over 1 over cosine of x, right? Can you see that the LCD is cosine x and they like cancel, right? So you're left with sine of x, right? Sine of x, because the LCD cancels, because sine over x over 1, which is sine of x. So tangent x over secant x equals sine of x. Okay, so let's try another one. Let's simplify sine of x plus cotangent, can you see? Cotangent of x, and then multiply that by cosine of x. So we want to simplify this. So we know that, okay, so sine of x, that's simplified. What about cotangent of x, right? Cotangent x is always the reciprocal of tangent, so it's cosine of x over sine of x. And then multiply that by cosine of x. So it's sine of x over cosine square x, because these two multiply, right? Cosine square x over sine of x. Oops, sine of x plus. Okay, so what would I do here? Since we're adding, we're gonna have to have the same LCD, so here's a 1, right? So we have to multiply this by sine of x. Multiply that both by sine of x, both sides. So that gives you sine square x, right? Because they multiply, plus cosine square x over sine of x. Hey, doesn't the sine square of x plus cosine square x is an identity, right? Let's remember. So remember sine square x plus cosine square x equals 1. So we can use that. So sine square plus cosine equals, whoops, 1 over sine of x. And then you're left with 1 over sine of x, but isn't that an identity? What does that equal? Remember, it's cosine of x, because cosine of x equals 1 over sine of x. So your answer is just cosine of x. That is your final answer. So this is just an intro to the 6 identities, because for the next section we're going to have to learn about the sine graph and the cosine graph and the tangent graph. And then, so this will come very helpful and handy. And that's it for this section.